Hi, thank you for joining me here on Living Recovery. And I've got a special guest, Christian Smith. How are you?
Good.
Good. Christian and I go way back. I met Christian, I want to say June of 2009, and we were actually both in treatment together. And got to know him and his family and shared some similar stories of everything. And Christian actually got me my first job in the industry about 6 years ago. And I just love him to death, love him as a brother, and he's got an amazing story. So thank you for taking the time.
No, you're welcome. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah. So let's talk about how, your addiction started, what started it, and just kind of let's talk about that.
Yeah, I was born and raised in Utah, and raised active LDS. Never experienced substance abuse at all. Or sampling, other than a sample of white clear alcohol, which was probably vodka, and I'm probably about the age of 10, 11.
Mm-hmm.
And then I smoked about the same age the butt end of a cigarette, which I would learn years later was truly the butt end of the cigarette. And that's how unfamiliar it was for me. Active LDS, lived in a family, was socioeconomically in the middle class, didn't have a lot, didn't go without much.
Mm-hmm.
And life started to didn't have any trauma, of any significant trauma. I believe we all have trauma, and I believe at the core of addiction at some level
Mm-hmm.
is a level of trauma. And trauma looks differently for everybody.
Right.
Most of the time when we hear the word trauma, at least when I hear the word trauma, I think of horrific abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse. I didn't have that. So the trauma I had was a little bit, for example, I didn't know it at the time, but my dad was a little bit of a spanker when I'm a youngster.
Mm-hmm.
And he probably spanked me less than 6 times, but I have memory not of the individual spankings, but of the message that I interpreted during the discipline.
Right.
And it was that, I don't love you right now.
Mm.
And that just messed with me. Again, this is probably in the unconscious part of my mind at the time. I had to kind of look back in the recovery process of what was it that hurt so bad that I ended up finding a way to self-medicate it and then acting upon that for 25 years. So I didn't have any significant trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Family dynamics were, we had a large family. If you have a family like ours, there were 8 of us. You're either Catholic or Mormon, but we're active LDS. Dad's in the leadership, mom's in the leadership of the church that we're at. And high school, played sport, was a pretty good athlete. Had to be, if you're the 4th kid in a family, you gotta be good at something.
You're the middle child, right?
Yeah. And so sports kind of where I found an outlet and some validation.
Mm-hmm.
And then in high school, at the end of high school, I didn't struggle with substance abuse, but I struggled with relationships. I don't know if you can say horny on your program, but I had that disease.
Yeah.
And so I always had a girlfriend. I was always pushing the envelope to see how far I could get.
Right.
First base is good, second base is a given, and so on. So I always struggled with the relationship side and didn't feel like I could be alone without a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So after high school, and I'm dating a particular gal when I graduate high school, a good LDS guy ought to go do on after high school is go on a mission.
Right.
So I quickly went on mission. I graduated high school in June, and by August I'm in South Africa and spent 2 years having a great time.
Wow.
Writing the girl that I was dating.
Right.
And I thought she was just being so diligently faithful to me, and she wasn't. She being my wife of 38 years, Kelly.
Uh-oh.
And so anyway, I get home from the mission, had a great experience, get home from the mission, and still have the desire to be intimate.
Right.
And the remedy for a return missionary who wants that is to get married.
Get married. Yeah.
So I was engaged to be married 7 days after I got home. And,
but you dated before.
Yeah, we dated a little bit.
So,
before,
okay.
I thought she was, she was dating while I was gone, like nobody's business. Kelly, I hope she hears this. And anyhow, so we married. I get home in September of 81. We married February of 82. Sure hope I got that month right, because if I don't, Kelly will let me have it. But that's when life started to take a different twist for me. That's when I started to be exposed to some strong emotions that I didn't know how to cope with, namely in the form of communication. I was raised in a family with a lot of kids. There really wasn't a lot of voice raising going on. Unless you're playing sport,
Right.
you didn't raise your voice.
Right.
It was very, very, very calm.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of that contention is of the devil type of a mentality. On the other hand, I married Kelly, who grew up in a family whose communication was very healthy. And I'm telling you right now, that communication style of being assertive
Mm-hmm.
is much healthier than the style of this passive aggressive.
I'm still working on my communications. So that's something I'll always be working on.
But when I first was exposed to that in the
Yeah.
marriage, I do something silly and Kelly kind of calls me out, what was that? Now, that's dumb or whatever. Voice might have been raised a little bit. And it takes me right back to when my dad's disciplining me.
Oh, yeah.
Like, oh no, man. And I'm just panicking inside. If we're playing sport, I don't care how big you are. Basketball 1-on-1, I'll take you right now. I actually wouldn't take you, Travis.
But you're kind of like,
60.
oh no, what? Okay, I'm in trouble. What did I do?
Yeah,
And it takes you back to probably to that adolescent
That moment of
right?
dad,
Yeah.
disappointed. Don't say that,
Yeah.
Dad. Beat me or something, but don't say that.
Right.
So 3 years into the marriage, I'm in a motorcycle accident, and people that will understand at all addiction know the rest of the story. It just is a long chapter of about 25 years where I was ambulanced to St. Mark's Hospital, broken leg, lots of road rash,
Mm-hmm.
where there was a lot of physical pain, and the remedy at the time for physical pain was lots and lots of opiates.
And what year was that?
That would have been about 85.
85. Okay.
And I think our oldest son, Adam, would have been born about 86.
Okay.
So what I learned through that pain medication deal is the prescription said take one or two pills as needed for pain. The physical pain went away, broken leg, road rash.
Mm-hmm.
But I learned somehow, I didn't even know how, other than I learned that if I took 3 or 4, not only did that physical pain go away, but this pain inside my chest, it didn't hurt anymore. And in fact, I actually felt what I thought was normal and even happy, which was true.
That's all of my guests that I've had on that have had substance abuse, we all say the same thing. I felt like I had arrived.
Yeah.
It was like there was no up here. I felt good here, my body. I could go play sports right away, right?
Yeah. You and I have a good friend, Dr. Terry Sellers.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember he shared his story years ago, and I remember hearing it, and he said something that just resonated with me. At some point during that early stage of pain pill medication, I did have the overwhelming sense of if I could only feel this way forever, life would be good.
Right.
And so it just started me down that road of introducing a coping mechanism for confrontation. Ultimately, at the core was any significant form of stress.
Right.
And I healed from the motorcycle accident, end up in the hospital again with playing LDS church basketball because, we got to try out for the scouts. There's a lot of NBA scouts that go
always
to
an
church
ankle.
basketball.
Always an ankle. Always. It's always.
So I'd end up in the hospital. Kelly worked in the hospital. It was a Cottonwood hospital.
Mm-hmm.
They, in the ER, they loved Kelly. They thought I'm a good guy. And so they were just too generous with the pain meds.
Right.
And sometime in the next 3 or 4 years, I began to use pain pills just to cope with life.
Right.
Didn't have any serious physical pain and would feign injury, doctor's shop. During that course of that time, it was uncovered I had a bad back, which was just painfully beautiful.
Yeah. It makes it wait. I can go to the doctor. That's how I can get what I want.
No, they would take an x-ray
Yep.
and say, you got a bad back. You
Yeah.
need to see a specialist. What do you take for pain?
Yeah.
And so, about at some point in there, Oxycontin became prevalent. And at this point, I got doctors that are willing to prescribe it. I can't make a month's supply go a month.
And that's about 95 or 96 is when I think that came out.
So yeah, that puts us about right. Things are getting pretty bad. Kelly, at that point we've got 2 kids, Adam and Chad, and Kelly knows I'm off.
Mm-hmm.
She knows it's pain pill related, but doesn't know the extent of it.
Right.
During that same time, late 80s, I'm introduced to another coping mechanism, which exposed another weakness I had, which was I need people to like me.
Right.
If you don't like me, I can't like me. And the way that was exposed was I'm going to a training conference. I'm selling mechanical heart valves, cardiovascular grafts in the medical community. Training seminar in Kansas City, Kansas. On the first night, we go to dinner as a group that are trainers or trainees. And they say, "You're from Utah, are you Mormon?" I said, "Yeah, but I'm not a good one," which was a lie, right? That just, I don't want you to judge me and not
Right.
like me. So I think if I say I am a good one, then I won't be invited to your parties or whatever. So after dinner, they go to a piano bar and start drinking. And they said, "What do you want?" I don't know. They order me Bartles and James wine coolers. And I remember that was my first exposure to alcohol. And I remember going, "You gotta be kidding me, man. This stuff tastes like Sprite."
Yeah.
This is just fun. And they kept buying, I kept drinking. The net result of that was I woke up early the next morning in a hallway of the hotel we were staying in. Not in my room, in a hallway.
And that's your first alcohol, other than when you were
A
younger,
sample,
with maybe
a simple, tiny shot sample,
Gotcha. Yeah.
which was nasty. That was my first exposure to alcohol. I drank like an alcoholic the very first time.
Wow.
And I would continue doing that, traveling a lot. I kind of started, a good day was to pound some opiates with alcohol. Right. That's a great day. On an empty stomach. That'll intensify everything that my metabolism can throw at it.
Well, we get to the point we don't eat.
Not eating.
You don't eat because then it takes away that effect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll fast forward a little bit here. Things are getting bad, but I'm still employed. I still go to church, have positions of leadership, but I am living this life inside that I know is contrary to my value system, which is just piling on shame, copious amounts of shame. And the more shame I got, the more stressed I got out. The greater the stress was, the more need to medicate it was. And I just got caught up in this cycle. My body began to build up a tolerance for opiates and alcohol. And now I'm going through, again, I can't make a 30-day supply of Oxycontin, which was a large supply, probably 160 pills. I can't make that last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Then I have to start buying that off the street at $1 a milligram. And now I'm going through copious amounts of money. And Kelly sees this, and we made efforts it's causing conflict in the relationship. But my defense, the best defense is a good offense. So every time Kelly would come at me, I would just turn it back on her. And
we're good at that.
Yeah, manipulate the heck out of her.
We're good at that. And to make we make them feel like that everything's a lie.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what the disease of addiction does.
So by this time, early or late 1990s, I guess. Now I've got 2 more kids come along, Sarah and Abby, and things are getting worse. The family dynamics are getting bad. I'm lying all the time, hurting relationships with the 2 older boys, stealing money from family.
And what year is this about?
Well, we're skipping. This is a short version of a long story,
Yeah.
I'll skip to right now about 2003.
Okay. Well, we're going to take a quick break, and I want to come back and we'll hear more of his story. So thank you for joining us. We'll be right back.
I am a business owner.
I am a mother, a doctor.
I am a student athlete.
A lawyer.
I'm a police officer.
I'm your neighbor.
I needed meth.
Opioids.
I needed coke.
I needed alcohol.
I needed opioids.
I needed heroin.
I needed help.
Maple Mountain Recovery is here to help you with your healing and recovery. Call 801-499-9316 or visit us online at maplemountainrecovery.com. Welcome back to Living Recovery. Thank you to our sponsors, Maple Mountain Recovery and Living Recovery Interventions, my friend Christian Smith. Thank you again so much for joining. And so talking about your son, we're talking about, what your addiction's leading into. So let's just kind of.
Okay. So I've got substance abuse with opiates going on.
Yeah.
I got alcohol. I also have at that point some pornography and inappropriate relationships outside of marriage. And then about 2003, things are going bad in my workplace where I'm starting to miss surgeries. And I've got the heart valves, the sterile heart valves. So that's a problem, that when you schedule a heart surgery, you've got a patient there and you have the valves and you don't show. And so I started to get bounced out of the industry. And I don't know why I'm choking here. And in about 2004, I'm unemployed, and the family's worried now, sick.
Yeah.
And they're starting to confront me a little bit more, and I'm still in this denial, not even a contemplative place, just in total denial. And one of the counselors that was working with families said, before you can get any help on the substance abuse stuff, you got to fix the physical pain deal.
Right.
And so they talked me into having surgery for the back L5 S1, where they fused, screwed, and caged it. And I had that surgery, and after that, the pain was gone. But I still had this pain inside my chest and heart.
Yeah.
And still didn't know how to cope with it. And the way I resorted to coping with that now was stop the opiates,
Yeah.
but remain drinking and gambling. And the problem with that is I'm actually a really good gambler, sober.
Yeah.
Texas Hold'em, I'm pretty good. But I get drunk and I'm going through tens of thousands of dollars, and now start stealing from family more and more.
Right. Right.
And finally in 2006, Kelly says she's not going to do this anymore.
Yeah.
And she shouldn't have.
Right.
And so I'm essentially homeless. And the other family, they weren't having anything to do with me, and they found out I was stealing stuff. And so between Kelly and my kids and my extended family, they somehow deduced the remedy was to let's get him some help in the form of legal charges. And so I was pled guilty to a bunch of theft and forgery charges that were all felonies, and
So they reported you.
they did.
They reported you with all the gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And ended up going to jail and spent a year and a half in jail. There was the 2nd District Court in Utah and the 3rd District Court. They were fighting to see, who got to incarcerate me. And I ended up in Davis County and did a year-long program there. Salt Lake County.
Mhm.
Had to do 6 months there. So it was a year and a half. I get out of that, reconnect with Kelly. She came to visit, and the kids, all but one kid, Chad, never came.
Yeah.
He was just hurt that bad.
Yeah.
And get out from jail, go back home, and then relapse real quick.
Oh,
Stressed really quick.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
it was about that time. Now we're to 2009,
Yeah.
and I decided for the first time in my life, treatment was what I needed, and began the journey that you and I met at the Ark of Little Cottonwood, and
Mhm.
met a good counselor there. I actually love him. He's kind of a nerd, but I love him.
Yeah.
Jason Webb, and
Yeah.
he helped me understand some of my thinking errors, and we worked through some of that pain that I had and communication, and so I get out of treatment, and shortly after treatment was offered a position in the industry and found my calling. I remember that first year working in the industry as an admit guy. I never worked so hard for so little and been so happy in all my life.
Yeah.
And it's never left me. In the course of the last 10 plus years, I've had the privilege of offering hope to people who don't have hope,
Yeah.
who you and I are familiar with,
Yeah.
people that don't think there is a way to come back and to get well and to rebuild relationships. And on the rebuilding relationship, 3 of the 4 kids, Kelly quickly forgave me,
Mhm.
and she had a lot of forgiving to do, but she was quick. So
Was that after treatment or was after jail? Because then you had a period of time.
Yeah.
How long was it between jail and treatment had you been using?
probably about 9 months.
9 months.
Yeah.
So you were back together during that 9 months,
Yeah.
though.
But at that point too, early on, she had a list of 4 lists of deal breakers. If you're going to come back home, the list on a napkin that I still have was 1, you can't use, which is fair.
Right.
2, you got to get a job.
Mhm.
That's fair.
Mhm.
3, you got to get your driver's license, which was also fair because I've been driving all the time on a suspended license on probation. That's a bad day.
That's not good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
those judges don't like that.
Yeah.
And then the 4th one, I chuckle at, and please, if people are hearing this, they're LDS. I'm active LDS. It is my value system, but I chuckle at the 4th deal breaker. You got to go back to church. I remember thinking, are you kidding me? That's just one more thing I sucked at, man. I failed at that. That didn't help. What are you,
Right.
nuts? But finally, one thing that recovery's taught me in this process of figuring out hope was that I thought spirituality and religion were the same thing.
Right. Right.
And that the gift of recovery, one of the many gifts, is that those are 2 different things.
Yep.
And the spirituality I seek, not to offend religious people, but I don't find it in a church building.
Mm-hmm.
I find it in the places where the God of my understanding can say, Christian, I know who you are, brother.
Yeah.
I know the pain you're going through and you matter to me. And those are in quiet places, whether it's in the mountains or whether it's early hours of the morning in my bed or just meditating somewhere.
To me, this is a spiritual experience.
Yeah.
I mean, we're sharing your life
Yeah.
journey.
Yeah.
That's a big deal.
Yeah.
You know?
I remember early on in the recovery process going to church with Kelly, and somebody's given a talk up there, and the talk is riddled with shame.
Mhm.
Things like the code word for shame for me is you should do this or you shouldn't do that.
Right.
And my head starts moving left to right, and Kelly puts her hand on my knee and says, "It'll be okay." And I say, "It won't be okay." This guy's spewing shame, and these guys are buying into it, you know. And
Yeah.
I remember after the meeting, I said, "I got to go." She said, "Where are you going?" I go, I'm going to an AA meeting. These guys are full of crap today. They don't know what they're talking about. So I'm going to an AA meeting. But the other gifts of recovery is the relationship. I'll pinpoint Chad,
Mm-hmm.
our second son. And after I began the journey of truly recovery, and I specify the difference for me, there's a difference between sobriety and recovery.
Right.
Early on in sobriety, I expected everybody just to, hey, I'm here, man, look at me and forgive me, and everybody. And most people did, and particularly family members, except Chad. And I remember if I walked into a room that Chad was in for the first year and a half, he walked out of the room. And by that time, Chad's, he's 25-ish, 26 or something. And I'm going, what is your problem, man?
Yeah.
I'm good. And
Yeah. Because it's all about us.
yeah, it was all about me.
Yeah.
I don't know what your deal is,
Yeah.
Chad. You're a bad guy. And it took Chad 4 years before he could engage in the relationship. And I didn't understand at the time why it took him that
Mhm.
long. And now I totally understand and respect it. For people like Chad, for them to open up and engage in the relationship with their dad in this case, every time he did that, it risked him being hurt
Right.
again.
Right. Yeah.
And so he had to protect himself.
Right.
And it took him that long.
Well, and he probably also was protecting mom during all this.
Yeah.
Because I experienced that with my son.
Yeah. He was. And namely because Adam, during that last portion, while I was in jail, Adam was on a mission in South Korea. So Chad was the man at home, the
Right.
oldest male living guy there. And yeah, when I come home and I'm going, I'm better, I'm
Yeah.
well, give me the checkbook. I'm the man of the house now. Chad's going, you're not man of anything, brother. And the cool thing about this process, and I attribute it to great counseling,
Mm-hmm.
the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous for me. I know that's not for everybody, but it works for me,
Mm-hmm.
worked and continues to work. And then hard work. Those things attributed to, before I walked in here, I'm on the phone with Chad, who's calling me going, any chance you can play golf on Saturday? And he's my best golfing buddy these days.
And he's calling you to hang
Yeah,
out.
he's calling me.
Yeah.
He a little over a
Yep.
year ago, he had knew his firstborn.
Mm-hmm.
10 years ago, I would not only have not been invited to the birth of that baby, if I'd have shown up, they'd have called the cops. And now, 5 nights a week, I get a FaceTime because they live a little further away from us.
Yeah.
At 7:00, where I get FaceTime with my granddaughter, and I get emotional because, that is the fruits of recovery, of hard work, of true tenets,
Yeah.
of getting rid of shame. I don't live in the place of shame anymore.
Shame, guilt.
I have some guilt. I'm okay
Yeah.
with guilt. Guilt to
Mhm.
me says, hey, dude, you just made a mistake. And I make a lot of them. But shame has a different message for me. The message of shame says, you, Christian, you are the mistake. There's nothing we can do about that.
Yeah.
And so I get to this place of hopelessness. And so shame can jump in a lake.
Well, it was the same thing with my son. So I get sober, right? So prior to me when I'm in my addiction, everyone's like, "Oh, look at Nancy. She's keeping it together. She's doing everything. Look at Nancy. Look at Nancy." I was just kind of like, I'm off here on the couch or I'm doing my thing, right? Then I get sober, and then it's like, wow, look at Travis. He's doing amazing things, right? And so we were always off on the relationship and the recovery with the family. So I tell people, everyone was part of my addiction. My family has to be part of my recovery. So I would go up to my son and go, things are okay. Let's hug it out. And what I learned was, it's not about me. And what I would do is say, I'd send him a text, I love you, I'm here when you're ready to talk. And it took 2 years.
Yeah.
It took 2 years for him to be okay and finally go out to eat and finally go to a movie. And now our relationship, is better than ever.
Yeah.
And I get to show up and suit up. And when I say I'm going to be there, I'm going to do it. And when they have problems, they call me. I mean,
Yeah.
it's
such a contrast and almost unexplainable.
Yeah.
Except you and I understand the principles in recovery that are universal. They're universal truths.
Yep. And then what we get to do also is the trauma we've caused our kids, we get to help them take care of it so they don't pass it on to grandkids.
Yeah.
That I feel like that's one of my biggest things in my journeys of recovery. It's helping people, but it's making sure my kids and my family are in a good place.
Lance, I know your time's probably up. I got to tell you a funny story. It happened just a few months ago. Kelly and I are taking our 2 oldest grandchildren to dinner, and we were big spenders. We're going to McDonald's. And so we've got an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old. 8-year-old daughter, Hallie Rose, and 6-year-old Balake, or Blake. And we're just driving, and out of the clear blue, from the back seat where Blake and Hallie Rose are, Blake says, "Gramps, you went to jail, didn't you?" And I mean, I'm driving, you people can't see this, but I'm driving, I'm looking over at Kelly like, where did this come from? What's going on? And yeah. So all I could come up with was, well, secrets kill, so I'm not keeping them. So yeah, I did. I'm still looking at Kelly like, what is going on? And a few seconds after that, he goes, you did drugs, didn't you, Gramps? Yeah, I did. Yeah. Why'd you do that? And all I could come up with was, I was sick. And I think that's kind of really how I don't think this is a moral flaw.
Yeah.
I do believe that the sickness in me was my brain didn't understand how to communicate healthily, didn't understand how to be impeccably honest.
Yeah.
Confrontation was just like, you can't have confrontation. Truth is, life is confrontation. It's balancing it out. And so it was just fun to be able to have that kind of a conversation, although it took me by surprise.
Well, I want to thank my guest, Christian Smith, for being with us today. Thank you, Maple Mountain Recovery and Living Recovery Interventions, for sponsoring us. You guys have a wonderful day. Thank you.